Hello, everyone. I am so excited to have you here with myself and Io, who, of course, is taking part in this course in planning your novels. Um, I think it's a huge undertaking to decide to write a novel. And sometimes many people just don't know where to begin. But I'm going to guide you through this process step by step so that once your book is fully planned within the confines of this class, your writing process will go much more smoothly. I promise you that. I think that we'll have fun. We'll all get to know each other, build a community of writers that we can rely on, and we're gonna plan some books. We're gonna plan some bestsellers. I promise. So I am going to share some slides for you. I am going to try and actually do this video in one take, which is not easy to do for me. So you'll have to bear with me. I may stumble through my words a little bit here and there, but we'll get the content together as long as you're just, give me some grace. Also, I've been losing my voice because I work with a lot of teens. And last week I was on a university campus running a young writers workshop. And, when you're the moms of 25 teenagers, it's so hopefully my voice will stick with us here. So let me open up my PowerPoint for you. Okay, so a little bit about, see, I'm going to stumble through my words. A little bit more about me. Hi, I'm Abigail Wild. I'm going to be your instructor and guide you through this process. And you're going to begin. You're going to begin the process to becoming a best-selling author, starting with the planning. So just a little background on me. I have my Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. I also have a graduate online writing instruction certificate, and I've done a lot of education-based courses through Harvard's Graduate School of Education, basically in how to teach online most effectively. I'm a published author. Actually, I just put out my first book in February, The Art of Drowning. When it came out within the first week, it became a #1 bestseller in its category, which is young adult books about depression. It's called The Art of Drowning. I'm also a creative writing instructor. I teach for Apex Academy and Messiah University. With Messiah University, I do writing workshops for adults and kids. And with Apex, I teach middle school to high schoolers. And as I said, I'm the director of the Young Writers Workshop at Messiah University. Also, I have been a literary judge for Ink and Insights Creative Writing Contest. So I know what makes a good story. I have been trained in this. This is what I train others in, and I am so excited to pass this knowledge on to you. Everything that I've learned within my MFA will be given to you in this where it concerns novel planning. It's funny. I told my family that I would be recording a long lecture, and they all just showed up. So excuse me for the odd pause there. So now you know all about me, but this isn't all about me because this is your chance to write your best-selling novel. Or to plan your best-selling novel. So what I want you to do is take an opportunity. You can even pause the lecture right now, or you could do it after the lecture. But I want you to go onto the Facebook group for this course and introduce yourself. Let us know where you're from. What are your passions? What are your motivations for writing? Get to know each other. This is a community. What does that mean? This is a community. I truly believe that no writer can write in a vacuum. Now, I know a lot of writers aren't really the most social animals in the world, and that's okay, but we still do need each other, and we need each other support in everything we do with book writing. So we're going to be doing a lot of working together as teams, and you're going to be doing a lot of workshopping. What is workshopping? I know that you all have seen on Facebook all the many different kinds of writers groups where people post their writing and then the writers come along and slam them. Yeah, that's not what we're doing here. That's not true workshopping. True workshopping is helping each other grow. Okay, so what we'll do is you will post your ideas and your work for the whole entire class to look at. And then everybody's going to come in, they're going to try and be supportive. They're going to give constructive feedback that is helpful. And they're going to leave you with something motivational, something to let you know that this time creating your novel is 100% worth it. Okay. Um, a lot of times we'll get disheartened or say you need to have a hard skin if you're an author. Yes, that's absolutely true. But our goal here is to help each other grow, okay, to help each other become much better writers. You can't do that if you're constantly being slammed. So I have a 3-step method when you are workshopping, and you will be expected to not only post some of your work, but also comment on other people's work. So this is the method that I want to take for this course. 3 steps. Number one, tell the author something they did good. Tell them something that worked. Tell them something you liked. Don't just be light about it like, hey, I really liked your story. No, dig in deep. Dig in deep. We are all here to learn from each other. And if you don't dig in deep, what can be learned? You know, tell the author what it is that you liked. Step two, constructive feedback. Constructive feedback is maybe notating those things that didn't work for you. Okay. This does not mean this is not my genre, so I don't like it, or I don't like the topic you're writing about. No, none of that. You cannot say that to someone. It is not helpful. They're not going to change their whole entire topic just because it's something that you're not into. Right. So, what that means is forgetting about what your interests are or what your beliefs are and looking at what the author was trying to do with it. Were they successful in that? If you think that a character is a bit weak for the position they're in the book, say that and give maybe some advice. You can say, I would think about doing this. Okay. Um, and then after that, the third step is to leave them with something motivational. We don't want anybody walking away from this course thinking that they're going to be horrible writers because that's absolutely not true. Okay. So you need to give something motivational for them, come back around once more and say, hey, I just want to reiterate how much I loved this part of your character development, or this setting really feels like home to me, or maybe this setting is fantastic. Um, the world that you created for these robots to live in, you know, something, something motivational. I want everybody walking away feeling firm in their abilities. So that's the main thing. So the 3 steps again are to give positive feedback, but dig in deep with it. Okay. Number two, give constructive feedback, feedback that the author can grow on, can really chew on, can think about. And then number three is something motivational. Have them walking away knowing that they are a good author. Okay. Now, does this mean that you have to take the advice of every single person that comments on your work? No, no, you do not. If this were if you guys were in the process of actually writing your novel, I would say if someone gives you a grammatical thing to change or lets you know of a grammatical error, change that. I mean, as long as it's correct, but change that. If it's, I feel like this character is weak, or maybe you could try this, it doesn't mean that you have to take the suggestion. Now, I will say that if more than one person gives the same suggestion, you may want to try it on for size. This is like a buffet. Take what resonates and leave the rest. Okay, so don't feel like you have to change your characters, that you have to change your subplots, that you have to change your backstory because one person commented something about it. No, take a look at their suggestion, think about it, see if it works. Now, if you do decide to try and see if it works, create a new document, because I can't tell you how many times when I was getting my MFA, I actually made the changes that someone suggested into my main document and it didn't work. And then I had to like undo, and it was a big thing. And you can imagine if you're writing a large novel, and you change something, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble trying to get everything back. So just make sure with changes, keep it in a separate file. Okay. All right. So why write? Why should you write? I'm sure you all know your reasons for wanting to write just by the fact that you signed up for this class. But let's reiterate why. Why write a novel? You know, um, I was pushed to write my novel and then enter an MFA program because I had a story that I had to tell. Um, Something that happened medically with my son, and then how kind of our community reacted to what happened to him. I needed to write that. It was something, it was burning a hole in my heart. And so here I am. I wrote it. I wrote it. I had to. It was not going to let itself go, but I realized I didn't know how to write a story. So I went to grad school, and I got that extra degree and they helped me write it and it changed the course of my life. And I'm very pleased. I'm very happy about it. But why should you write? Well, do you have a burning story in your soul? Do you have an idea that you've been carrying around since you were a teenager? I mean, that's burning in your soul. Not every story has to be deep. There could be fun romances, scary horrors that really don't have like deep meaning. Like it's not like, oh, I need to write this story. It could be anything that's just you're thinking about. So why write? Why write it out? Why take the time to get it out? I believe that writers, people who are truly writers or creatives in general, you have to create to almost keep your sanity in this world, right? You have to create, you have to get your words down there. Almost like I feel as if writing is a form of meditation, if you will, or prayer, because I get into this zone where the words just I feel rested after I write. I feel rest. It feels good. And if I don't write, I become agitated. So when you have that idea, get it down. Get it down. Another reason to write, let's say you want to break into a business, if you have a couple of books behind you, it's going to legitimize you. It's going to force people to see you as the expert. Even if you are writing fiction, and you're going out into the business world, having a book behind you, a lot of people really look up to authors, as oddly as that sounds, because I was just telling my husband this morning that, when I was a little girl, I thought that being an author was glamorous. And then I laughed because no, it's a lot of hard work. And yeah, it's a lot of hard work. So why take it on? Well, it can help you in your career. It can help you get those thoughts out that you've had that you carried around. If you're one of those people that has a notebook full of ideas, get them out there. It's rewarding. It's scary and it's rewarding at the same time, actually. It's scary to know that someone will be reading your work, but it's rewarding when they come back and say to you, your words really touched me. You don't understand how close the situation was to my life. It helped me feel like I wasn't alone. Those are very powerful words. And so yes, I believe you all should write a novel. Not only that, like let's be honest. We all need entertainment. We all need something to grab onto and read and enjoy with our cup of coffee in the morning. You know what I mean? And so if you write, you're adding to someone else's kind of heightened enjoyment of life. So write, go for it. It's a powerful tool. Writing is so, so powerful. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we are going to be accomplishing this class. What in the 12 weeks are you going to be doing that will help you build your novel? So, of course, this week is our welcome week. Next week, we're going to be looking at our novel ideas. You're going to be creating 3 novel ideas, unless, of course, you already have one walking around with you in your head or in that notebook from when you were a teenager. You can certainly use those, but you're going to be really putting out your ideas. If you do not have an idea, you're going to come up with 3 ideas. Okay, and we will guide you through that. And you will post it in the message board. You will Tell everybody what your ideas are, because as I'm going to tell you, the first thing you need to do as an author for a few reasons is to tell people that you're writing a book. This can be for accountability. This can be as a way to grow your author base, to get people excited about your work. If you have people excited about your work, you're going to finish it. You know what I mean? Because you're going to want to make those people happy, and especially if they're waiting around for it, unless you're George R. R. Martin. So yeah, you're going to come up with 3 novel ideas, and you're going to post it in the workshop space, in the Facebook group. And everybody will be commenting, saying which ones they feel are the strongest, and you'll be choosing. So start getting some ideas in your novel. Once you choose one, that will be the novel idea that you will live with for the next 12 weeks while you plan it out, and then hopefully afterwards while you write it. Planning, we're going to be talking about outlining, which isn't as scary as it seems. Okay, I'm actually going to highlight for you many methods for planning, and I think it'll be good. You'll also learn different ways to plot out your storyline. So we'll look at Freytag's model, we'll look at the hero's journey. All of those, you will use those to plan your story in a very easy way, I promise. Then we'll talk about my favorite thing, character development. I love character development. I think just, I love character development. I cannot wait. I wish I could talk about it now. Yeah, so the 4th week will be character development. Your characters will come alive for you this week. They will become friends to you. They will become family. They may become people you hate, but we want to create characters that elicit an emotional response, not just for you, but for your reader. I want your characters to come alive so much for you that if you have to kill off one, you cry. You cry. Get happy at their triumphs. You have an emotional response. I think that is so important with character development. Then we're going to be talking about setting and world building. I am not a sci-fi writer, so world building is a little bit outside of my realm, but I cannot wait to explore it with all of you if you're running sci-fi or fantasy. And then, of course, setting. How to make your setting and world come alive. I'll just give you a quick tip. Treat your setting as if it's a character, because your setting can control the plot line. Your setting will interact with your character, and your character will interact with your setting. So therefore, it's a lot like a character. Treat it as if it is as important as a character. Next, we'll be taking a look at outlining, really get into the nitty gritty of outlining, really set everything up, putting everything in there, and all the different methods of doing that. So this is the week where you dive right in. And I will teach you why outlining your book makes the writing process go faster. It absolutely does. Then the next week, you'll be adding in subplots and backstory to that outline as a way to make your story richer, to bring in some of the other characters into the story, and how it can aid your protagonist in getting what they want or not getting what they want. We'll also look at past and present tense. You will make those decisions during week 8. We'll talk about the pros and cons of both past and present, because there are pros and cons for each. So we'll take a really hard look at all of that. And then we'll look at point of view. We have first person point of view, and we have several different third person point of views. We'll also look at some alternative point of views that a lot of people really don't think about. And so that is the week where you will make those decisions, and you have to explain them and why you made those decisions in your message board. How to keep the reader reading. This is the main thing, right? When you go into a bookstore, you pull it off of the shelf or on Amazon, you open it up and you look inside the book, right? And if you read the first page and it doesn't interest you, you put it back. How many times have you not finished a book? Oh my goodness. You don't want that to happen. You want your reader to keep reading. So we'll talk about different tactics and different literary techniques to keep your reader interested. Let me give you a little hint. It has a lot to do with character development. Then we're going to look at pacing and how you vary the pacing of your novel, whether it is going to be a fast-paced action scene or it's going to be a slow, reminiscent, maybe some internal monologue scene that would slow down the reader. And why is pacing important? Why is pacing important? If you keep everything short and choppy so that the reader reads things quickly, they're going to become exhausted. Whereas if you keep everything kind of slow and using the longest, most flowery words you possibly can with super long sentences all the time, the pacing for your reader is going to be much slower. They're actually going to become bored. The main thing to do is mix it up, and we're going to talk about how to do that. Then in week 12, here we are. We're at the end of the class, but at the beginning of your writing. You're going to start writing. You're going to pump out that novel, and what you're going to do is learn how to look back on the binder. You're going to create a binder for this class with everything that we've discussed, okay? Keep it out while you write, and you're going to use it while you write to help you get your story out there. We're also going to give you hints on what to do if you go off of your outline. Your outline is a living document. It can grow and change, okay? It's not written in cement. So you're going to learn how to manipulate your outline to kind of bring in the new direction, because I guarantee you're going to have a new direction while you're writing, you know? But it's good to still keep updating that outline because it makes the writing process go faster. And so during this week, you're going to be taking everything that you've done and you're going to start writing. And it's going to be challenging and it's going to be great. And I'm so excited for you. I love helping new authors grow in their writing. And this is your chance. And I'm just so excited. So excited. Okay. So things to consider before beginning. What do you read? I actually want to hear about this on the Facebook group. What's your favorite genre? You know, what do you read? What do you really gravitate towards? That is what you should write because you have a certain passion there for that genre. Okay. If you read in a specific genre, you are going to know all of the tropes, all of the ins and outs, everything that a reader of that genre expects. Okay. So stick in that genre. If you love it, why not write in it? Right. You have to figure out who your audience is as well. So the audience for a YA book is going to be completely different than an audience for like a cozy mystery. So you need to figure that out. Take a look at when you're deciding, when you're looking at your 3 ideas, what do I read? What is the last book that I read that I loved, that I absolutely loved and said, I'm going to read that again? You need to take a look at that. What worked for you in that book? What worked? Jot down the things that work. This becomes your writer's toolbox. If you write down things that work in other books, this will give you ideas for moving forward for your own. Now, I'm not talking about plagiarism here. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is reusing literary techniques. There is nothing new under the sun in literature. Nothing. What matters is what you do with it. Okay? And so, yes, you can write down techniques that other authors have used to help you learn and grow. And that is why you should always read as a writer. I see this argument all the time. I don't read, but I love to write, and I'm a really good writer. How do you grow if you're not reading? How in the world do you understand what readers of your genre want if you don't read within the genre? So I really suggest that while you're going through this course, you're also reading in the genre that you want to write in. Okay. And so we'll look at your audience as well. You need to figure out exactly who your audience is, what you read, even if you read YA, okay? And you're like a 50-year-old woman. Let me tell you something. Did you know Beyond Teens The next demographic that reads YA is middle-aged women. So just because it's YA does not mean that older women don't read it. They do. So you do have to look into who is reading this genre. Who am I trying to grab? Am I a part of the genre of what I like to, or am I a part of the audience, the normal perspective audience for the genres that I read, or am I outside of it? These are all important things. Okay, back to the reading thing. Stephen King said, if you want to be a writer, you must do two things above all others: read a lot and write a lot. Absolutely. Um, I read On Writing, which I highly suggest for any of you to read. Stephen King's On Writing is amazing. But the one thing he says is that you have to read, and this is, Stephen King, come on, listen. You have to read. Consider reading a part of writing. Every day when you sit down to write, you should spend some time reading before you start writing. It is that important. That is how you grow. That is how you kind of make your technique stronger. That is where you learn how to create characters that come alive, because you read one book and the characters come alive for you. And then the next book, they're flat. They don't come alive. Why? What's the difference? Why? That's what you need to look at. Try and inspect. Why in this book did this character work, but this book it didn't? Inspect exactly what the author's doing. And through that inspection, you yourself will become a better writer. So when you say to yourself, we're actually going to work on your writing goals. So you're going to spend so much time each day writing, in practice writing. Part of that time should be in reading. Okay. So just read. Okay, so when I talk about genres, of course, we all know genre: poetry, drama, prose, okay? But we're gonna get into commercial genres here, which is types of fiction. So genres are basically those categories of books. So that genres help, the booksellers organize the books in sections so that the people who want to read those books can find those books. A lot of times genres can mix. You can take elements from all genres, but there are certain tropes and things that readers expect within each genre that you must hit to be considered a part of that genre. But genres help you blueprint your plot, right? So every romance story must end with the couple getting together, or it is not considered a romance, right? It's something entirely different. That is part of your blueprint as a romance author, right? Or sci-fi, you must have some sort of machinery that controls something, robots, spaceships. There has to be some sort of technology involved. That's part of the blueprint. If you write a sci-fi novel and there's no technology, it's simply not sci-fi, right? So you have to tap into, which I said in the last slide a lot, what do readers expect? You cannot make your readers happy if they are expecting a specific thing, such as fantasy. They're expecting some sort of magical creature, and you don't give them a magical creature, they're not going to be happy. So you have to make sure that you really do research into your genre and what readers of that genre expect out of a book. So what are these genres? Romance, mystery, suspense, horror, fantasy, sci-fi, historical, contemporary, literary. And then mixed in with all of those, you have young adult. Young adult isn't necessarily a genre itself. It is an age category. Now they will call it a genre, but you can have YA mystery, YA horror, YA sci-fi, of course, tons of YA fantasy. All of those things can also fall into the specific age groups. Also middle grades. Middle grades would be middle schoolers. So like students from say 5th to 8th grade. Young adult would be high school. So that would basically be like 14-year-old to 18 or 19. And in addition to that, middle-aged women love YA. And then there's also new adult, which is college age. So check those out, and those would have elements of all of these. So they're not necessarily their own genre. They are just an age bracket, even though they are considered a genre on, say, Amazon. Okay, we're going to watch a video just for a little bit about literary genres.
Hi everyone, I'm Shayla here with Readsy. Today I'm going to be talking about literary genres and specifically doing a breakdown of the different literary genres. The purpose of this video is to help you learn how to classify your book in its category, genre, and subgenres so that you can market it correctly, find the right target audience, make the right publishing decisions, maybe even inform some of your writing decisions. Genre is essentially just a way of directing readers to books that they will most enjoy. It's a form of classification that exists to pair the right reader with the right book. It doesn't need to be a limiting factor. If you feel limited by the genre that your book is in, then you might want to look into seeing if there's a different genre that better suits your book. Now, there are also, of course, nonfiction genres, but in this video, I'm only going to be focusing on fiction genres. Let's start by talking about categories. This is the age category that your book is written for. A middle grade fantasy book is going to be very, very different from an adult fantasy book. So let's start with adult. Adult fiction is written for readers 18 years or older. Adult fiction doesn't need any kind of explicit content to make it adult fiction. It's not really like a film rating in that way, where film ratings are kind of dictated by the content. Categories in books allow you to have certain content, but it's not a requirement. So in adult fiction, there isn't really any kind of limitation on what content you can have. As well, unlike in children's categories, which I'll cover in a second, age isn't really a factor for the protagonist. Your protagonist can basically be whatever age you like, although typically it's going to be an adult character. But we actually do see quite a lot of adult books with teen or child protagonists. So next up is young adult. YA is written for the 12 to 18-year-old age bracket. YA books usually feature themes that appeal to teenagers, so identity and understanding your place in the world, friendships, and first romantic relationships. When writing YA, there are limits on content, but it's actually more about how you write the content than what you include. You'll find YA books that include violence, sexual content, drugs, really almost anything. It's just written in a way that is appropriate for teenagers. It is important with YA to understand the message that you are portraying to your readers. In YA, you'll typically see protagonists between the age of 15 and 18, with teenage characters as the focus and the main cast. So not only will your protagonist be in that 15 to 18 age range, but the majority of the cast will be in that age range as well. YA is also typically very internal, very introspective, with a lot of internal narrative. It's a very emotion-heavy category with a lot of focus on self-reflection. If you do want to learn more about the YA category, we've got an entire video answering some commonly asked questions about YA. And finally, we have middle grade. So middle grade is written for the 8 to 12-year-old age bracket. And as you'd expect, middle grade does have strong content restrictions, so there really shouldn't be any graphic or mature content whatsoever, although you can have some mild violence. Romance will be limited to kind of a character's first crush, but the content can be dark or scary. It just needs to do so in an age-appropriate way. Usually the protagonist and the main cast will be between the ages of 10 and 13. And middle grade is actually a lot more external than YA. YA is really internal, but middle grade, actually, you won't get a lot of internal narrative. It's much more focused on what the character perceives. The characters are more reactive to the story, where in YA, they're more reflective. Now, before we get into specific genres, there is another distinction to make, and that is the difference between genre or commercial versus literary fiction. Now, again, this is a distinction that often upsets people, but it is, like all genre classifications, just there to help the right reader find the right book. So literary fiction is character-driven fiction where the book's style or artistic quality has higher priority than the book's readability or entertainment value. Things like idea, theme, or social commentary are typically important. In genre fiction, which we'll talk about in a minute, the book's writing style is basically meant to be invisible. It's not really something the reader consciously notices in most cases, but in literary fiction, it's meant to be part of the reading experience and is something that the reader is meant to notice and probably appreciate. Now, if you are writing literary fiction, know that literary fiction does have subgenres, but They're much more broad, and the classification is all much looser. Within genre fiction, you get these really concrete, solid genres like horror, sci-fi, fantasy, everything I'll talk about in a second, all the genres that you're probably familiar with. Literary fiction does have some classifications, but they're really general. So you will see books that are literary fiction, say tagged as being magical realism or coming of age. In literary fiction, you'll typically see the subgenres based on the book's theme, and you won't really see any separation in how they're shelved in a bookstore. Literary fiction will just go under kind of the general fiction tab. So if you are writing literary fiction, you don't have to worry about this as much, but it is still worth knowing any potential subgenres your book falls under. On the other hand, we have genre fiction. So genre fiction is basically just a book that does fit into a specific literary genre. Genre fiction can definitely be character driven. In the past, this distinction was often drawn as genre fiction being plot driven and literary fiction being character driven, but this really isn't true. You'll see really, really character driven genre fiction. Really, the difference is that just even though it's character driven, there is more of an emphasis on plot, and the focus on the book being a enjoyable, readable, satisfying story is really there. It's more important to have rootable characters and adherence to specific genre conventions. Style is, of course, important, but it's not something the reader wants to be distracted by. And it's also worth noting that there are a lot of books in the middle. You can have a book that has genre tropes, but it's also really formally experimental. Or a book that is in a genre, but it doesn't really adhere to its conventions. Or you could have a literary book that's like set in the future and pulls in some genre elements. There's a lot of gray area between the two, and if your book does fall in that gray area, it's possible that you want to market it as upmarket fiction, or you kind of just want to use your best discretion and ask yourself where the target audience is. If my book is kind of like a literary fantasy book, will it appeal more to literary readers or will it appeal more to fantasy readers? So all of that said, now let's talk about the different literary genres and what defines each of them, but it is important to remember that books can be a blend of multiple genres. You'll hear it said a lot that a book is a fantasy horror or a sci-fi fantasy or a fantasy romance adventure. You know, genres is something that we often, genre labels are something we often smush together to create the right one for our book. So your book doesn't need to just neatly fall under one of these, but one thing you want to think about is kind of what your book's primary genre is. Basically, if I walked into a bookstore and I wanted to find my book, which shelf would I go to? If my book is a fantasy horror book, would I go to the horror section or would I go to the fantasy section? And are the people in the fantasy section my target audience, or are the people in the horror section my target audience? So let's start with mystery. Mystery novels follow a crime or conspiracy being solved from start to finish. Clues and information are revealed slowly, and the reader gets to play a role in solving the mystery alongside the protagonist. Mystery novels usually start with a hook and will have a satisfying conclusion that answers all or most of the novel's questions. If you are writing in mystery, some of the subgenres you might encounter are cozy mystery, noir, police procedural, spy or espionage, legal or medical, and amateur sleuth. Next up is thriller. Thrillers and mysteries are often confused with each other, but they do have distinct differences, even though they probably will overlap greatly in terms of tone and maybe even readership. Thrillers are books that have a suspenseful, twisting plotline and usually a dark, suspenseful tone. They often implement things like plot twists, red herrings, or cliffhangers and have high stakes and feature high-intensity situations. A good way to think about thriller is if it was a movie, it would be probably considered an action movie. It's kind of the literary equivalent of an action movie in a lot of cases. So a couple of subgenres that you might encounter in the thriller genre: action thrillers, crime thrillers, psychological thrillers, conspiracy thrillers, medical thrillers, and legal thrillers. So now onto another genre that is, again, often conflated with thriller and is very closely interlinked, and that's horror. Just like how mysteries and thrillers often overlap, so do horror and thriller, and they are related, but they are not the same. So horror is meant to scare, startle, or maybe even disgust the reader. It kind of relies more on this like instinctual, visceral reaction. Usually the protagonist is heavily antagonized by a lot of antagonistic forces, which could be supernatural or paranormal, or it could just be a very frightening, bloody, intense, realistic situation, such as in a slasher. Like thrillers, they're very high stakes, but in a thriller, the stakes usually come from wondering if the character will achieve their very high stakes mission or goal in time. Usually in a horror, the stakes come from wondering if the protagonist will survive. Some subgenres include paranormal, gothic horror, body horror, slasher, survival, and occult. Now let's talk about historical fiction. Historical fiction is fiction that is set in the past and is meant to transport the reader to another time or place. They're usually very richly detailed and carefully researched and can involve reference to real people or real historical events, or maybe even integrate those things into the plotline. Usually the historical setting is more than just a backdrop. It's a very core element of the story and the read experience. Historical doesn't really have as many subgenres. Typically the subgenre is just the time period that it's set in. So if you're writing a book that's Victorian, the subgenre would just be Victorian. But some other subgenres that you might see are things like fictional biography, historical mystery, historical romance, family saga, and alternate history, although it's important to know that family sagas don't have to be historical. Then we have fantasy. Fantasy novels are speculative books that feature magical elements, either in an alternate magical world or a magical subset of our own world. Probably one of the most distinctive genres. It's pretty hard to miss if something is fantasy. And it also probably has the most subgenres of any genre. There are so many fantasy subgenres. So if you want to learn more about fantasy, we've got an entire video on fantasy subgenres that I'll leave for you to check out. But some of the more popular ones that you might encounter are genres like high fantasy, urban fantasy, dark fantasy, flintlock fantasy, political fantasy, and mythic fantasy. Then we have sci-fi. Sci-fi is, I would say, adjacent to fantasy. So sci-fi stories are speculative stories with imagined elements that don't exist in our contemporary world, just like in fantasy. But the difference is that the imagined elements are explained by science rather than explained by magic. Typically, this is paired with a futuristic setting that could include things like space travel, other planets, aliens, or advanced Earth society. There are a lot of really cool sci-fi subgenres such as cyberpunk, space opera, post-apocalyptic, hard science fiction, near future, military, sci-fi, time travel, steampunk, and pulp, and many more. Just like fantasy, there are a lot of different sci-fi subgenres. So if you're writing sci-fi, it's definitely worth reading up on the different subgenres because there's some really, really cool ones. Next up is dystopian. Now, dystopian and science fiction often overlap. The Venn diagram of sci-fi and dystopian is almost a circle. And in the past, dystopian probably would have just been considered a subgenre of sci-fi, but it's risen in popularity so much that it's kind of become its own genre. So dystopian genre is fiction set in a society that is worse than the one we live in. If the society is futuristic or involves technology, then it's probably also science fiction, but they're not necessarily the same. You could even have, say, a fantasy book that's dystopian. So a couple subgenres for dystopian that you might encounter are zombies, post-apocalyptic survival, government control, and environmental destruction. It's not the cheeriest genre. So on the complete flip side, we have romance, also probably one of the most well-known, well-established genres. A romance novel just follows a love story, typically with a lighthearted, emotionally satisfying conclusion. Romance books, of course, still have conflict. All stories need conflict, but the conflict might be more lighthearted as the focus is on the developing romantic relationship. Of course, books in almost any genre can feature a romantic relationship. The difference is that in the romance genre, it's the focus, and typically the relationship prevails in the end. Usually if a romance doesn't have a happy ending, say one of the characters dies or they don't end up together, it's typically not considered a romance novel. It's considered, the genre we'll talk about in a second, contemporary. So a couple subgenres are contemporary romance, historical romance, romantic suspense, erotic romance, and paranormal romance. You might notice a lot of recurring genres from genres we've already seen. That's because this is a genre that you see really commonly paired with other settings. Finally, we have realistic or contemporary. This is kind of the most vague of all the genres. Basically, realistic or contemporary fiction is fiction set in the real world, present day or near to present day, about realistic events that could actually happen. The goal is to follow realistic scenarios and characters and try to depict those situations truthfully. There aren't really distinct subgenres to this category. So you might find elements of romance, you might find elements of thriller. Contemporary doesn't just mean that the book is set in a contemporary time. It also means that it's focusing on people's realistic lives and trying to view situations from a realistic viewpoint. Like I said at the beginning, a book doesn't just need to be one genre. It's okay if your book blends genres or fits into multiple genre categories. What's important is that you know how to market it and that you're able to identify your target audience. I would recommend start by identifying your book's age category and then your book's broader genre. So of all the genres I just covered, which one does it fall under? And then research subgenres in that genre to find the best genre label for your book. There are way more subgenres than I have time to cover in this video, but I hope that this gives you kind of a clear starting point. So that's all for this video. Let me know what your favorite genre to write is in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time, bye.
Now, I wanted to add to something that Shaylin discussed in the Readsy video you just watched. Who is your reader? It's important to know the demographic of your reader that you are trying to reach with your writing, because it can change the way you write. If you're writing for an academic at a university level, you're going to be writing in a completely different way than if you were writing for a 10-year-old. So it is important to know educational levels, hobbies, gender, age, things like that. You're going to need to write to that person. I know that if you're writing your heart, you feel like if you have to write for your audience, it might take away some of the creativity. But I would say if it constricts you and helps you to focus in on people who are reading your book, it opens up avenues for creativity within those boundaries that are strong and important. So if you have something that is very important that you need to tell, think to yourself, who also needs to hear this message? So if I'm writing my heart, if I am writing something that is important to me, who out there in the world needs this message as much as I need to write it? You need to make sure that the book is accessible to that person. Okay, so one of the things that you should think about once you have your idea firm is, what is your comparable novel? Okay, your comp novel. Now, this idea of a comp novel will be brought up time and time again, because even when you go to publish, publishers will ask, what is a comparable novel? So with that comparable novel, you should read that novel. You should use it as an example. When people ask you, what are you writing? What is it most like? People generally, if you say, hey, it's like Harry Potter, they're going to know exactly what your book is about. Not that it is exactly like Harry Potter, but it's comparable. Okay, so it's important to choose this comparable novel. It's more important than you realize. It really is. I can't tell you how many times I have given my comparable novel. People will ask this, and it's honestly, what's your book about? Oh, well, it's a lot about this book, which is huge. It says a lot. I know, do you know how many people, authors I know, if someone comes up to them and says, what is your book about? And they stand there stumbling. One of the first things that they can do is say, well, it's a lot like, my comparable novels, it's in the same genre as so-and-so book, right? So why do you need to figure out your comp novel? You need to make sure that your novel appeals to the same audience as that novel. Okay. Heightened comparisons. You do use that comparison for selling your book, for marketing your book, for explaining your book. Publishers will ask. And you get to know what agents represent the authors in your genre. If you go to, say, your favorite book, and you can look on the title page, if it's not self-published, if it's published traditionally, and it will tell you what agent they went through, what agent house they went through to get published. Look at those. Then look up that agent. That means that's an agent that represents authors of that category, which your book fits in. So when you go, if you decide to traditionally publish, if you go and shop around your book, you're going to want to hit those agents that cover your type of book. So a great way of learning who those agents are is in the title page of any of the books that you like that are comparable to your novel. You can even just go to the bookstore and look, okay, well, here's the YA section. Who are these agents? And look through all of them. Okay, so how do you choose? You should choose two comp novels. They should be pretty recent, within the past 3 years. They should reside in the same genre as your novel idea. Choose a popular novel, but not a mega hit. So I use the example of Harry Potter, but maybe not a mega hit such as that. Maybe something everybody knows about, but is not like obsessed with it. Okay. Choose something with the same themes. The theme is something you're going to develop in this class. We're going to have a whole lecture about themes. So choose a book that handles the same themes. So The Art of Drowning deals with a lot of psychological issues. So my comp novels also deal with a lot of psychological issues. Figure out how your idea is similar and how it is different. I can't tell you how important this is. A lot of the publishers now are saying, okay, what are your comp novels and how is your book different? Be ready to answer that. Be absolutely, I've been asked that several times. Be ready to answer that question. How is your book different? Okay, so throughout this course, we're also going to be looking at a bit of marketing. And I know that you're just in the outlining stage. Am I crazy to talk about marketing? Why would I be thinking about marketing? Not only that, but man, marketing's scary, right? It's putting yourself out there. And yes, I am going to talk about marketing. You should start marketing right now. I have full faith that each and every one of you is going to be successful in writing your book, right? You're taking the first step. That first step, you're doing it. Now, all you have to do is follow through, word after word, paragraph after paragraph, chapter after chapter, and suddenly you're going to have a novel. You know, it's happening. But the fact of the matter is, you're going to have to market that novel. It's nice that you're writing it, but if people don't know about it, they're not going to buy it. Here's the thing to think about. Even if you independently publish, there are so many books loaded up on Amazon day after day, like thousands, tens of thousands every day. How do you make sure that your book rises to the top, that your book comes up in searches? You know, you need to start marketing right away. The rule of thumb is that on social media, you should have at least 10,000 followers before you release your book, which means you have to start now. Start now. It is entirely possible. So we're going to read through this very quickly, but each week we're going to study a new kind of way to market yourself according with this list. And then when we're finished with this list, we'll pull up another one. So tell people right here, tell people, talk to people about your work. Don't keep it a secret. Tell people you're writing a book. I know a lot of people say no, because then if I drop it, they'll think that I didn't, follow through or something like that. The fact of the matter is, if you tell people, that's that extra oomph you need to actually finish it. You know what I mean? You need to start talking to people. If you finish writing the book, go through the whole process and then suddenly, hey, I wrote a book. They're going to be like, wait, what? No, you need to build anticipation for your book. Talk about it. Talk about what it's like to write a book. Talk about your characters. Talk about what they're going through. Create excitement. It takes time to create excitement. You need to make sure to tell people in your family, tell people around you, join author groups. Talk to other authors and notice their experiences. Learn from what they have learned. Learn from their mistakes. I will let you know this. I fully think that if you're going to join an author group, join a small one. Okay. If it's on social media, join a small one. Don't join one of those large groups. Join one where they start to feel like family. If there's more than, say, 200 people in a group, that's not going to feel like family. Find one that feels like family. Get out there, join workshopping groups in your neighborhood. Usually, libraries are a great place to aid you in finding workshopping groups in your neighborhood. I guarantee you there is one. Workshopping groups are worth their weight in gold because that is your writing community. None of us write in a bubble. We need other people. We need other people to bounce our ideas off of. We need other people to grow off of. Get your group of authors together, get your community together, join a workshopping group. For the purposes of this class, you'll be using the workshopping in the group for that is specifically for this class. So you will join kind of an author community within this course. And that is a good thing, but push it further, go further. Okay. Community, your community. Look for the artist community in your area. Start attending events, get to know other creatives and support them. So if there is an exhibit of paintings or sculpture, go and see these things. I guarantee you're going to run into a poet or novelist. You're going to run into writers. Artists generally like to stick together. Go meet them, go to book signings, join groups, start supporting the arts in your area, and you will get the correct people around you to help you. I guarantee it. Okay, your readers, you have to look at where to find your readers. You need to forge friendships with people who will talk about your book. Word of mouth marketing is huge, but be authentic about it. Don't be friends with people just to market your book. Be friends with people so that you can learn from them, so that you can share your lives. Be authentic. People can tell when you're being fake, that you are befriending them just so that they talk about your book. Don't do that. Have forged real relationships with people. And word of mouth is wonderful. Word of mouth sells a lot of books. So do talk to people about your book. Do forge friendships in those workshopping groups, forge friendships in the community, in the artist community. Now, social media, you need to go where your readers are. Okay. I started on TikTok because I write YA, and that's where teens are. And what I found was a wonderful, wonderful community of authors and readers. You need to figure out where your specific reader is on social media and go there. Here's the thing about social media, it changes quickly. What is popular today may not be popular tomorrow. You need to stay on top of it. But social media is a powerful marketing tool. Okay. Now, I'm not saying start a TikTok or start an Instagram page that is only about your book. You can't do that. That doesn't work on social media. You need to be authentic. You need to be yourself. You need to reveal a little bit of yourself, entertain, do other things, talk about other authors' work, and then maybe like a few times a week, put it in there that you're writing a book. Talk about your journey of writing a book, but that can't be the entire focus. Okay. So you have to learn how to use it. We will do more about social media, but really start building your social media impact now, right now. Call yourself an author. If you have not published your first book yet, just put yourself up there as an author. Say you're a writer. Okay. Talk about writing. Talk about other things. Talk about what's going on in your life. Generate interest. You have to start building your base. Okay. All right. So for homework, these are the things that I want you to do. Introduce yourself to the Facebook group. Under the thread for introductions, I want to know who you are, where you are, what's your life experiences, and what do they bring to the table for your writing? What are you interested in? Look at genre. The next part, there will be another post about genre. What genres are you most interested in? Okay. What genres do you read? What genre do you think you'll be writing in? Then in the next post, who is your reader? Who is your ideal reader? Explore this, discuss this. If you're not exactly sure, ask in the Facebook group. Ask, this is what I think my story is going to be about. What should I do? Who reads this? That's a great place to ask. Comp novel, figure out what your comp novel is. Okay, your comparable novel. So for the comp novel, you need to go onto Amazon, go onto Barnes and Noble, go to the bookstore, go to the library, and look at books. Look at books that you are interested in reading. Check out what they look like, read a few pages, get to know them, and see if they could be your comp novel. If you think that it is within your genre, buy the book, check the book out. Read it, and see. Also, not only that, you need to read. You need to read every day anyway. So you might as well read some comp novels. And remember, there are no new ideas, there are only just ways to do them. Okay. So don't feel like if I'm reading my comp novel while I write, will I be stealing this idea? No, because you're going to do it differently. I guarantee you, you're going to be doing it differently. You're not going to copy that book. First steps. What will your first steps for growing your readership be? Okay, all of those things that we looked at before, talking to people, joining a workshop group, joining the artist community in your neighborhood. What is going to be your first step? What is going to be your goal that you plan on doing this week? What are you going to do this week? I can't wait to hear about it. I am so looking forward to these next 12 weeks. Hopefully, I didn't bore you too badly. So, yeah, I will be active on the Facebook group conversing. You can ask me questions, ask each other questions. And remember, when you are discussing someone else's ideas, that 3-step method for workshopping, remember, say what you like. Don't just say it lightly, dig into it. Give constructive feedback, give real reasons, and maybe give some suggestions in a polite way. And then third, leave the person with something motivational. We want to learn how to workshop correctly and not kind of shatter someone's writerly spirit. So, okay, everyone, I hope you have a great week. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.